I don't know, half a dozen employees that work in it year-round, and then another 10 to 18 people, depending, in the summer cleaning, so.
Okay. Yeah.
My name is Jennifer Bisson. I own a single short-term rental, and I am a Oars Island resident.
And I'm Jane Covey, a Select Board member.
Howard Levitan, Planning Board member, and I live on Oars Island.
Sherry Blackstone, I live in Cundy's Harbor. I have a property management business.
Mark Scantus, resident of Harpswell Center. Live here full-time with my wife.
Bob Goodrow, Affordable Housing Committee member.
Nellie Clifford, I work for mostly the people at this table and a couple others.
Great. Peter, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Peter Shirus.
So first thing we will do would be look at the agenda. Is there any change anyone would like to make to the agenda before we adopt it?
Make a motion to adopt
Thank you.
January
Second.
9th meeting.
Second.
Seconded by Mark. All in favor? Thank you. And then secondly, approval of the minutes from our last meeting, which was December 19th. Again, any comments or
I
suggestions?
do have a comment. I asked Denise to look this up for me, because I thought we voted on the survey. I thought there was an actual vote at the meeting. The meeting's not up online yet. So, for some reason, so I couldn't find it, but I was pretty sure we took a vote, and I thought there was only one person that didn't approve. And the minutes say consensus, but if we have a vote, we ought to record the vote.
Yes, we did have a vote. I went back and looked at it, and I may have not read it correctly in my vision, but I thought there was a hand up by everybody.
Yeah,
And I can be corrected if that's wrong.
that's my recollection
Okay,
too,
so-
but the video will tell us, so.
That's the
Yeah.
video I looked at. So if that's correct, then let's correct it, that there was how would you like to word it?
That
Unanimous vote?
that the survey was approved by motion and vote. Doesn't have to say what the vote is, but it was approved.
Okay. Denise, will you make that change? Okay. Agreement on that? All right. Anything else? Okay.
Do
may
I
I
have
have a
to
motion
amend
to?
my action to vote on the draft? Sorry.
Sorry?
Do I have to make a motion? Do we have to make a motion?
Yeah, we have to vote to approve
As
the draft.
amended.
As amended.
Okay. Make a motion to accept the December 19th draft as amended.
Second?
Second.
Seconded by Jennifer. All in favor? Thank you. Okay, I just have a couple of announcements to make. In terms first of the survey, to let everyone know that we now, as of this afternoon, have received 499 responses to the survey.
Wow.
Most online, and thank you very much, everyone in the public, because that makes it very much easier for the staff. I also want to suggest and when we get to the public comment, you'll see that there were a couple of comments about the nature of the survey in terms of its format and how it went out. One complaint, which is a legitimate one, was that long URL was very difficult to use to get in. And everyone should be aware that we now have a link to the survey on the front page of the website, the town website. One place it can be found is in the news and notices. And the second place it can be found is the recently put in place STR task force box, similar to the comp plan box. And if you go into that, you go into the STR Task Force page, you'll find another link to the survey. So there are two ways to get to it now, which hopefully will make it easier for people. But anyway, thanks to everyone who has responded. And to remind everybody, the survey is open until January 23rd, at which time it'll be closed, and we'll be finalizing the results of that. The other thing that I'd like to suggest is we have many comments coming in by email, which is terrific, which is great. If they can be sent through the link, which is also on the STR page, on the front page of the website, Tell Us What You Think link, that goes directly to Denise, who then logs everything in and then distributes them back to us as the process goes forward. So that makes it more assurance that nothing will get lost in the mail, especially if it comes into my mailbox. That doesn't mean people can't directly communicate with me. That's perfectly fine. I appreciate that. But it's administratively easier if they come into the Tell Us What You Think link. Okay, that's it for the announcements. Does anybody else have any announcement? Yes, Bob.
I just had an internal, question within my own mind of reading some of the comments from people sending them in. Are they 100% believable?
What do you mean believable?
Well, okay, I have, for instance, of one that I read, and I know it's not 100%. It's their viewpoint, but it's not 100%. So we're taking that as gospel, no matter what.
We're taking it as what people tell us. It's what people tell us.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well,
Okay.
I have a.
Bruce.
I mean, we've listened to some of your opinions about your experience with your neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you've stretched the believability of some of the, you've had multiple car accidents down there, and you've had,
I
think
can support
every-
whatever I
it's-
want,
it's-
whatever I've said. So let's be
all right,
clear.
well, I think everybody's got an opinion. You have one, and so do those people that fill out those surveys.
I hear you.
I did send that survey off to somebody that I happen to know who has been involved in polling. And his comment was, and national polling, he made his living doing this, so this is not a man on the street interview, and it said it looks like it's designed to get a yes response for question 7. And I do feel like question 7 is, it's the kind of question where you can't answer that anyway, but yes, unless you're a fool, and I'm worried that we're gonna end up,
Agree.
the question is,
Which one's 7? Is that the?
do we have the survey? I don't have the survey in front of me, but,
I don't have it in front of me either. Okay. We're moving, I think, into the section 5 of the agenda now, right? Your comments?
yes.
Yeah, I think we moved on.
Yes, we
Yeah,
have
we
moved
moved
on
on.
from number 4.
Yeah.
You have the paper with you.
So I wasn't here at the last meeting, I didn't get to speak to this, but I feel like this is sort of a train that we're on, and it's going in a place I don't really want it to go, so I want to speak to that. So question 7 says something like, do you think it's a good idea if,
Should the town have a policy regarding STRs for the
Well,
purposes?
it actually says, given the town has a responsibility for safety, it has that kind of preamble,
Sure.
which
Yeah.
may be what your
yeah, I mean,
your
who in their
person
right
was
mind is going to say
responding
no?
to. There's
I
kind of an
don't-
inherent, yeah.
And it's gonna push the agenda of folks who wanna put policy in place here. Because I mean, what do you expect the answer to that question to be? What % of people are gonna say yes versus no? I'm willing to say 90+% of the people think it's a good idea.
So
That
we'll
guests
find
that
out
come
when
to
we
the
get
house.
the results of the survey. That's
Yeah, well,
that's
what I'm
one thing,
saying is,
yeah,
Jane,
yeah.
is that survey is set up so that you're gonna get, it's a leading question, and this guy is right. It's designed to get a yes answer to question 7. And
It
I
is a
feel
leading question. May I add something to that? When we found out that there was a survey consultant, we weren't given a name. We have no idea who this person was. Jane did let us know that it was a retired social scientist. I am curious if this social scientist conducted the proper research of our Harpswell community, if they had qualifying direct observation, any analysis of any text or any interviews, communications regarding Harpswell economics. Then I researched the duties of a social scientist, and I learned that they use scientific principles to analyze social systems, draw conclusions, and implement strategies toward affecting change or swaying opinion in a given population.
so. A comment that I got from this poll taker was, I assume the establishment of a policy will mean regulation, restrictions, code enforcement, penalties. Respondents are not giving questions concerning these impacts. For example, I might favor short-term rental in the abstract, but not if it adds to the town bureaucracy, enforcement mechanisms. Right now, no true negatives of such a policies are mentioned. So it sets you up, it leads you. So it's an unfair question. I mean, I felt like it was that way. I put it in front of them, and I've sent it to 2 different people. So that's my comment about the survey.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's leading. I also have spent a lot of time going back through these meetings, and when we set up the meetings, it's our mandate to make recommendations and to draft policies, if appropriate, for consideration. It implies there's a process here. It implies there's due diligence here. It implies that, maybe we do need a policy, but maybe we don't need a policy. And from the first meeting, Jane, you said we're here to develop an important policy for Harpswell. Our goal is to develop a policy for Harpswell and to put a registry in. And a registry, we've always talked about this registry as having a fee. We've never shied away from that. So we went from checking a box in the first meeting to a fee in the second meeting, and now we're talking about restrictions. So we've gone.
I'm just questioning
Policies.
the restrictions comment. That's my nonverbal.
I feel like we've got restrictions coming, all right?
You feel that,
So,
okay.
Yeah.
Could I respond to the questions about the survey? The point is taken about it being potentially a leading question. That's fair. That's fair. No problem with that. The question about the social scientist being involved, not having context of Harpswell, et cetera, may assume that that person was involved in the content of the questions, and that is not how it worked. When we had the meeting of the Public Engagement Working Group and reviewed that questionnaire, there was concern about the rating scale, the disagree to agree, and there was question about that not being done well, would be confusing. At that meeting, and not prior to that, but at that meeting, I said, I will find a social scientist to help with the technicality of phrasing that rating scale question. And that the individual had nothing to do with the content of the questions. So I just want to be very clear about that. It was technical request for how do you do a scale that says disagree, somewhat disagree, on the way going forward. So
So when we had the December 13th meeting with the survey, we had a phone call on December 8th, and I asked you about the survey. I had quite a few questions about that, because I was
Yes.
very concerned about it, uncomfortable with it. You said that you had a survey consultant at that time, in that phone call.
I don't
that was
recall saying
December
that.
8th.
I don't
That was
recall saying
before
that.
our
Yeah,
meeting.
I don't recall saying that.
Well, I have it written down.
Okay, okay. Yes, sir.
I get back to the original point that I tried to make earlier, and that was, we had a meeting, it was on the agenda that we were going to go look at the survey. The people that were here, and we took a vote, and we authorized the survey. So I guess I mean, we can go back and try to revisit history again, but, you know, we voted on it. And I recognize there are people that didn't like the survey, but it's done, it's out, and we ought to take it for what it's worth. You know, I could make the comment that my biggest problem with the survey was it allowed innumerable entries. And there are obviously people that have a strong point of view about short-term rentals, one way or the other. And this will allow results that may not be valid on a statistical standpoint, but still will show what the people, I guess, are thinking about. But we don't know how many people did it multiple times.
The accuracy is questionable.
Yeah, I mean, we can have multiple, I could do 25 surveys if I wanted to.
And so could I, the other way.
So, okay, and then, and now we've got this, I just feel like we're gonna have, it's gonna be irresponsible for us not to address a survey question number 7, that there's 95% of the people say, hey, we need a, and, you know, we need to have safe houses for people. I mean, who is gonna answer no, right? So
I could say the same thing about the beginning questions, which talk about the economic value of short-term rentals. Those were all questions that, you know, like apple pie and mother. Yeah, well, we like great economies too. But so they balance each other. Everything that
I don't think it
the
was
way that-
balanced, and these folks don't think it was balanced.
Well, then-
I'm just saying, when we get the results, bear in mind, there are some really slanted questions in there, in my opinion. You don't have to share it.
Okay, let's, Peter, I think, wants to say something.
Well, you know, I agree, we took a vote on it, and that's what it is, and it's out. You also, I think, rightly said, Howard, you know, we take it for what it's worth. It may not be worth much because, you know, the nature of the question. I also think, I had a whole series of comments at the last meeting about the survey, and that last question was on my list, and I kind of got worn down and didn't bring it up because I felt I wasn't getting anywhere, I guess, with my other comments. But I had problems with it from the beginning. You know, in addition to it being a leading question, to me, the other problem is the answers are yes, no, don't know. It seems to me the key answer is it depends. You know, do we need a policy? Well, it depends on what the policy is.
Right.
And that wasn't an option. That wasn't an option in the survey. So I think that question, you know, as Howard said, we take it for what it's worth, and it may not be worth much.
And I also think that the ultimate, we are charged with making a recommendation. The select board has to, whatever happens, the select board weighs in on it, and the town meeting weighs in on it. This isn't something that we're gonna say, yeah, we're gonna have a regulation or a registration or whatever. We're just gonna make a recommendation. And at some point, we're all gonna vote on it. And the public's gonna then have their chance to comment at that same time. So I mean,
I want to add.
we're a little early in the process.
We're very early in the process, and I want to add that there will be any number of public meetings as we develop the information that we're working with, as we develop notions about what might be options for a policy. That will be made available to the public. There'll be community meetings, there'll be feedback coming in as it is now. We'll have a lot of response to what people think, but we have nothing concrete at this point to put out there for the "it depends" question. And we'll get there. We'll get there.
As somebody on the working group that went through multiple meetings with the community and a larger meeting at the school.
This is from the housing.
It's a process,
Yes, yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm not gonna tell you I have my mind made up one way or the other. If we come down to a judgment that is one way or another, then we take the rules, we take the information that's provided us. Yeah, I might have my own opinion, I've told you that, that's fair. You have your own opinion, but I'm gonna listen to the facts to get us to the end result. And hopefully we have a good, whatever outcome. We may be wasting our time here, but let's try to make it the best we can. That's all. I mean, I don't want to say there's a regulation that needs to be made. I'll be on that board to help, but if it isn't necessary, we need to get the information.
I think it's important with the survey too, to remember that it's just a tool of gathering a different perspective. It's not a black and white, list of answers for us to create guidance from. It's just one step in the process.
I mean, the community had a lot to say that we, the affordable working group, learned. We didn't know better until they spoke up, which was very informative because we were going different directions. The community has a lot to say here, and if we don't listen, we're not doing our job.
What we have in that survey also is that last opportunity for people to make comments. And that may be the part of the survey that is most valuable to us going forward.
Will all of that be shared with all of us?
Absolutely.
All of the raw data, everything from the surveys?
We
We'll
can,
get to
as we get
actually
forward,
review.
as we go forward in the meeting tonight, we can talk about how we take that forward and how we bring it into the full task force. Yes, that's part of what our plans need to be put in place. All right.
Well, I'm not done. I'm not done. I feel like, you know, I don't know why we're here. I don't know why we're driving this thing towards a policy. I mean, we keep going to this affordable housing issue, and it's not an affordable housing issue.
Bruce, let me interrupt. I'm sorry to do this, but we do have to do some business tonight in addition to this.
I would like to hear what Bruce has to say. I
Don't
think
try
it's
to
feel-
members, they all should have a voice equal to yours.
Yeah, I feel like I get interrupted a lot by you, and I got interrupted the last meeting I was at twice. And
Well-
both times I was speaking less than 2 minutes, and when I got done, you gave Howard the floor for 28 minutes, uninterrupted, about the zoning, and trying to get a reason. In fact, he spoke and said, when he talked about home occupations, he thought this might be a way, and this is a quote, "The reason I bring it up is we do regulate home occupations in Harpswell. It must be compatible, home occupations must be compatible with the neighboring use in that area. So we do have a type of regulation that is close, if not encompassing, and STRs as of now. If we did nothing, we could potentially utilize that section of our statute to regulate short-term rentals." Then he went on to say, even if that's not what the intended use of that was for. So I was talking to the fire, Mike Plant, is it?
No, Drake.
Mike Drake, and my first meeting, I said that the one thing I'm here about is fire safety. And you interrupted me, you wouldn't let me finish, and he was giving me great information. So he sat down and no offense, Howard, but I don't want to manipulate the zoning ordinances to try to figure out a way to manipulate this so that we can go after short-term rentals. And that's 28 minutes of that, and that's what we got down to was perhaps, and he also stated, unfortunately, the definition of home occupation excludes short-term rentals, as if to say, man, if we had that, we'd get them. So I think there's a hidden agenda with a few people here, and it's really, you know, the more I listen to these meetings, it's 2 or 3 people that dominate these things, and when someone raises their, and goes against the flow, we're getting interrupted. So you know, that, Emily Wood, yeah.
She's here.
I said early in the last meeting I was at, I said we should slow the process down. I don't like what we're doing, and I feel like we're not gonna do a good job. And Howard responded that Bob responded that Affordable Housing Task Force was in complete disagreement to that, and he was adamant about it. He felt like this is the wrong way. These processes need to be rectified. I don't know what those are. And it was on our agenda in a big way. So that was on the December 4th meeting, 17 minutes in. And an hour later, Emily Wood gets up and she says, I'm confused. How is affordable housing pushing the urgency of the vote? And Bob says, the same guy that says it's on our agenda in a big way, says affordable housing has nothing to say about it. We have left it off the board. Quote, it is not on our agenda anymore. This is in the same meeting, an hour later. It's a complete contradiction, and
Let me answer this.
she said, I'm confused. How could she not be confused with that answer? You said
I
an
don't
hour
mean to-
earlier, it's on our agenda in a big way, and you followed up, it's not on our agenda anymore.
It got taken, if I can speak, am I interrupting you?
Go ahead.
So, under the Affordable Housing Committee, we had it as a listed item as an influence on attainable housing. When it rose to such a discussionary issue, the Select Board decided to remove it from our agenda. So it became a moot issue to us at that point in time. What I would like to equally say, that those are not contradictory statements, because we were talking about it, and we thought it had an impact, but I've also answered to you, most of the short-term rental are in the shoreline zone that really don't impact the inland zone, where most of the attainable housing will be forthcoming, if it at all. Now, let me equally say, there is still this word that short-term rental may have an effect on long-term rental, meaning they've squeezed out long-term rental. I don't know, but according to Mid-Coast Council of Governments, they've already published saying that it does have an effect. I don't know. I'm waiting to hear. So I don't, contradict me as you may, but don't take me out of context. Thank you.
Earlier in that same meeting, Jane said the comp plan and the housing task force, which sees urgency in getting this through, is one of the reasons why we're here. Emily Wood said, I'm confused. How is affordable housing pressuring the urgency of this vote? And Jane said, I don't think the housing task force recommendations provide any urgency to this. An hour later, she said the exact opposite. So it's confusing if it's nothing else. We're trying to ram something through. We knew this was short term. It was not, we don't have the input from from everybody. And I just feel like we're policy-driven here. And I don't think we should be policy-driven. I would like to make a motion that the task force works towards education versus policy and recommendation, so.
I would second that.
I would start.
I don't think getting up in front of the town meeting and making any recommendations at this point makes sense for us.
Are you, go ahead, Jen.
Well, I just wanted to say, Jane discussed a lot at our last meeting
I listened to it.
about, okay, I didn't know if it was online or not, but about slowing down the whole process. So that might just be helpful for.
No, I appreciate that, and I listened to that, and because I had suggested that at the meeting before, and I was stopped, and I was told that, we're not gonna do that. That doesn't make sense. We have a mandate, and we're gonna present something. I'm appreciative of that, but, I have listened to I listened to Mike Drake get up and tell us that when he was asked the question, what's the most important part of a registry for us? When he was asked about, what a registry would do for him, he said the most important part of a registry is for us to contact the owner. He specifically left out a public safety reason. Bradbury, when I was asked to sit on this meeting, the first call I made was to Bradbury, because that's what I felt like we were coming here for. Bradbury said to me, I don't see any problem with short-term rentals, and he confirmed that in the last meeting. I mean, he got up, those 4 noise complaints, 8 disturbances, a disorderly conduct, and 4 intoxicated. You could get that in a single 4-unit apartment in Brunswick. And that's the whole town. We don't have
It's for months.
a problem here, and you guys are addressing this. I feel like a lot of you are addressing this like we're Portland. And you've mentioned Portland and Rockland and Camden and Kennebunk over and over and over, and when you get I really feel like the short-term rental business in this town is way different than those towns that you keep alluding to. You're putting restrictions in place, all of those towns, if you stop short-term rentals, there's plenty of motel options. Right? There's like 24 rooms in Harpswell. And nobody has said, I want to eliminate short-term rentals, but I do feel like we have gone from checking off a few boxes or to do due diligence to see if we need anything to the point where we're talking about much more restrictive language. And there's a definite direction here, and I think 2 or 3 people seem to be leading that charge. I feel like educating, the town has a pamphlet. I think we can enhance that pamphlet so that we're educating people on water and septic use. But I don't feel like we're at a point where we can make recommendations to the town on policy. So I'm making a motion that the goal of the intent of this task force would be for educational purposes versus putting an ordinance together or.
Howard?
Are you all done on that?
I'm all done.
Don't want to interrupt.
Thank you.
The mission statement that we were given by the select board, was voted on by the select board, says that our job is to first assess the nature and perceived impact of STRs in Harpswell, and that's where we are now. We haven't finished that. And then it says, and develop a regulatory policy for approval by the legislative body, which would take into account the historic nature of the vacation rentals in Harpswell. Now, that regulatory policy could be an education policy, could be a registration policy, could be other regulations, if that's what we recommend. We're not even anywhere close to that yet. So I don't see how we have the authority to go back to the select board and say, no, that, we don't like that mission, we're gonna do just education. We're not ready yet to get there. It may well be that that's where, I mean, how many people on this committee?
9.
There's 9 of us? Well, that 5 people feel that way at the end of the process, that's what we'll do. And the people that don't feel that way had a chance to participate. So I don't see why we need to do anything yet.
So the mission statement, when we had our subcommittee meeting, Jane had mentioned that she was going to change the wording in that because we changed the wording in the survey. That's not been changed yet.
Well,
It still
it's not
says
something that we could
develop.
change anyway.
It should
There's-
say consider, is what we discussed.
We put consider in the survey, yes. If this task force wishes to change our mandate, the way to do that is for the task force to discuss it and to agree on what they're recommending back to the select board, and then the select board will make its decision. So we have one motion here to change to education. I
I
haven't
would
heard a
second
second yet. Sherry has seconded that. And you've thirded. Okay. Is there any more discussion of that? And then we'll go from there and see if there's any other wording to the mandate that we want to discuss. Any other discussion of Bruce's motion?
Yeah, I mean, just a question of clarification. I mean, the current mandate does sound like we are, can you read it again, Howard, that second part? Because it does sound like we're on a path to create a regulatory policy.
That's
Is,
what it says.
okay.
That's what it says.
And then the word consider, I think
But
modifies.
let's deal with Bruce's first. That was just a point of order, okay? Let's do one thing at a
Well,
time.
I guess my question then is, does the current mandate of a regulatory policy include just education?
Right.
It certainly.
It does? That's considered a regulatory policy?
That would be a policy. I don't know that it's
Well,
regulation,
what
but
it
it's a
says is
policy.
regulatory policy.
Understood.
Yeah, so if we, can we, all so I guess what I'm saying is, if we all agree that education fits that definition, then I think, I think we're fine. If it doesn't, then that's another story.
Okay, what do people think about that? Does education fall under regulation?
Not in my book, no.
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 No. Okay, so, any more discussion on Bruce's motion that, I think we're talking about the second part of the mission statement. And would you like to give the language that you would like us to consider? You can give, can we pass that over to him so he can look at it?
Can I suggest another friendly amendment to Bruce's? Maybe the change to the mandate should be that the task force considers educational and/or regulatory policies. Maybe, because I agree with what Howard said, we're early in the process, we're getting a lot of input. I think if we broaden our mandate to say we will consider educational and/or regulatory policies, I don't know if that's a friendly amendment to what you were saying or not, Bruce.
I think it's definitely, sounds, for me anyway, less boxing ourselves into knowing where we need to be at the end of the year and before we know where we are right now. But opening up the doors more with including a little bit more inclusive verbs, all the verbs.
Okay, Bruce?
Well, my motion was that the goal of of the task force would be to work towards educational, an educational pamphlet for guests and homeowners, and not to focus on
Okay.
policy.
Okay, so, any more discussion then of Bruce's motion that the mandate be to promote education? Is that a fair way of saying it?
So, coming out of the Affordable Housing Committee working group, after where there was quite the discussion on short-term rental, and it was taken away, but up to that point in time, we, the group, had felt it was a very concerning item within Harpswell. I learned a lot more from joining this group than we knew, because maybe we didn't foster enough education to ourselves during that process. But the comments coming back from the public were not in like or in kind. But that didn't mean we had all the information, but it got taken away from us. So I'm not willing to say education only. I want to hear the facts on the road, on the street, whatever. Until that time, I don't have my mind made up.
Okay. All right. Any other comments before we vote on on Bruce's motion? All right, let me ask for,
So just to clarify, so basically what we're doing is we're eliminating the wording of regulatory policy, and we're substituting it
pass it
with
back.
educational, whatever.
Consideration.
Is that what we're doing?
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
we're not doing anything. We're
We're
recommending
recommending that
to
that
the-
be the
We're-
mandate.
we're-
select board that they change the mission statement.
That the mission statement would be
Well,
to,
we did adopt it, though, as a task force, right?
No.
wait,
This was
it
given
was
to
given to us as a task force.
But we agreed to it.
Well, we were,
So it would be to remove regulation and substitute education for the goal of the task force. Clear? Yes. All right, let me ask for a vote unless there are any other comments. All those in favor of Bruce's motion, please raise your hands. 3, 4, okay. All those not in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4.
I abstain.
Abstain, and 1 abstention. All right, we don't have a pass, that did not pass. It did not. Me ask if anyone, if you want to make a motion for your suggestion, Peter, of education and/or regulation,
Yeah.
and see where we go with that.
Sure, I would move that we amend, or we ask the select committee to amend the mandate of the task force such that we consider both educational activities and/or regulatory policy.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
Bob seconds it. Okay, thank you. Any discussion?
I think I said it already.
I'm sorry?
I feel like that is definitely like, I am totally on board with what we create being educational and or regulatory. And I would also really love to give ourselves the opportunity to hear and collect that information that our community has to
Yeah.
give us.
Right.
So that's-
Okay. Any other comments? Mark?
I just wanted to say, I talked about unintended consequences in the beginning of the meeting when we started with this, because I have seen that happen. I guess I would like to see, I think we've asked the people to give us a survey. There's always going to be something wrong with a survey. There's always going to be something wrong with a letter, and that's just the way it is, and everyone's going to look at it differently. So I understand that also. So it's not a perfect situation, but we have asked the people to do that. We should at least take the time to get that information, to look at that. It was never my view coming here that we or I was going to make a regulation that we were going to have for the town. The selectmen make the regulations, they make the rules. We may develop a policy guidelines in the end. It doesn't necessarily have to be a regulation. I think we could do that well, but I also need to see the feedback from the people, because I don't know where they stand. I have no idea. I'm not in this realm of long-term rentals or short-term rentals, so I look at it that I'd like to get that information, and we're gonna go down a road, I'm not sure what road, I'm hoping it's not regulatory, because that's really up to the select board. It's not up to the task force. We can give them suggestions of where we're coming from and what we're doing. But I'm much more comfortable with that. I think we need to see the information and then go down that road.
Well, I appreciate that, and I agree with a lot of what you say, and my concern is that we've got, the deadline on that survey is the 26th?
23rd.
23rd, and we've got how many meetings to
We
come
have
up
a
with?
meeting on the 22nd.
We have a proposal here for going forward, and can talk about that. To go, did you see that in the packet? I hope.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So as we have before, we'll look at the schedule, at the plan, at the activities, and agree on where we think we should go now, and when we need to make changes going forward after we've learned more, or determined that we were missing something, we will look at it again and make adjustments.
Well, the
So-
email said we were gonna do something late January, so late January to me is, I don't have a date.
We have two meetings. We have two on the schedule now, and the suggestion was that we do one or the other, to be determined tonight, and keep moving forward, where we would be looking at the results of the survey as one, and then potentially some other activities as well.
So in order to do that, we have to do it the 30th, not the 22nd, right? Because the survey doesn't deadline until
Yeah,
after that.
Right.
All right,
Let's
all
get
right,
back to
so-
the motion, if we can,
Okay,
okay?
no, I'm just,
Yeah, Howard.
I was going to suggest that I think people are objecting to the word regulatory because it may have some kind of a connotation. I thought regulatory can include everything. It's a broad word, but maybe it would be easier rather than to specify an either-or thing, because it isn't either-or, it could be.
And/or, it's not either/or, it's and/or.
And-
Well, even and/or, what does that mean?
It
You
can
could
be
have
both.
Like
both.
amendment, friendly amendment to Peter's?
Well, I was gonna,
What's the amendment? I don't know what the amendment is.
I was gonna suggest, well, your statement was, the original motion was, if there is a motion, that we would consider both educational activities and a regulatory policy.
No, that was not my motion,
no.
Well,
no.
that's what I wrote down when you said
That's
it.
not what I said.
Oh.
I said we consider education and/or the regulatory policy.
Well, what I was gonna suggest is why don't we suggest to the select board that we take out the word regulatory and just say what we will, and develop an appropriate policy, whatever that is. It can include education, it can include registration, it can include regulation, it can include a lot of things if that's what we determine ultimately at the end. But it's appropriate to, we could even say appropriate to Harpswell.
Well,
Because later on in this mission statement, it talks about taking into, there is qualifications. It says taking into account the historic nature of vacation rentals in Harpswell, as well as current and expected future trends. I don't know what that means, but
Peter, you have a friendly amendment. How would you like to proceed?
Well, appropriate is in the eye of the beholder. I'm not sure appropriate really, I mean, it seems to me we've got a current mandate from the select board, which is to develop a regulatory policy. It seems to me that we ought to leave that in play. As far as I'm concerned, the thrust of my motion is leave that in play. That's what they came to us with. But what we want to change is, we will consider that. It's not a given that we will recommend a regulatory policy. We will consider that. We will also consider educational activities, which I think is the thrust of Bruce's motion that was not agreed to. So to me, it's putting in play the full array of possibilities. Very much, I think we're early in the process, we want to get a lot more input. It seems to me this gives us the latitude to consider all of those different areas in what we ultimately recommend. So I would prefer to leave it as it is.
let me see if I've captured what you just said, that the language would change, if I could have it, bring it back to myself. Proceed, to assess the nature and perceived impact of STRs in Harpswell and consider education and regulatory policy for approval by, and, inclusive, not and/or, education and regulatory policy
And
for
or,
approval.
and/or.
And/or, okay.
Or, so
And/or,
it's,
okay,
it's not saying there will
Be both.
definitely be either one,
okay.
but it opens up the possibility to that full range of possibilities.
So we're removing develop, putting in
Develop,
consider,
consider. and-
education and/or regulatory.
Yes.
And the same, rest stays the same.
Yes.
All right. Any other, whoever seconded that, are you good with that?
I think Bob seconded,
Bob,
didn't you?
yeah, okay. Any other comments
The
before we
select board
vote?
doesn't have to approve it.
No.
The select board will do what it does, yeah. It'll
They
be,
can void it. They can just say, no, leave it as is.
they'll do
Okay,
whatever.
thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah. It's a recommendation. Ready to vote?
Yeah.
All right. All in favor of Peter's amendment to the mandate, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, opposed? 1. Thank you very much. We will write that up. We actually have a select board meeting tomorrow night, so I will bring this to them tomorrow night. Okay, are we ready to move on?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Are we still at the comments?
If, that's my question. Do we have more comments, more to talk about?
Yes, please. One of my concerns, questions, Howard's working on an ordinance, is what I understand. He's in a different working,
Policy, it's the policy working group
for this, for short-term rentals.
for this task force, yes.
So there's already a policy being developed when we don't have all the information and we've not said that we need a policy? Like, there's no,
Do you want to say
there's
anything
no
about what?
meeting, like, do we get to listen to these meetings? Do we have any information
There is
on
no-
this?
There is no policy, and all the meetings are open to everybody and to the public. but
When
there is
are the meetings?
no policy. There hasn't been a meeting, because we're not through the assessment period yet. When we get done with the assessment period, that's when we were going to start the policy discussion. As a matter of fact, I think the agenda that you put out has a discussion of, as part of the assessment period, of what other towns and cities have been doing that are similar to us. So that was going to be, I think, on,
Maybe the end
End
of
of the
Ju-
month or
maybe the end of
February
January.
13th.
February 13th, yes.
so we're
Yeah.
not even close to sitting down and putting pen to paper yet. We don't have a policy.
And
Sherry?
we don't know that there's any problems either. And in the phone call that I had had with Jane, she even stated that we don't know of any problems.
Sherry, is there anything more that you'd like to say right now?
I'm in the process.
Okay.
Thank you, Jane. We did discuss in our subcommittee meeting that the wording would be changed in the mission statement. And like nothing, that hasn't changed. I'm glad that we're maybe making a little bit of progress on that. And with the discussion of the public comment coming in, the emails that come in to you or the town, that is what is stapled together here.
Correct.
Do we know that's all of them up until today or yesterday, whenever that was put together? Is that everybody's?
That's
I
every-
know that there were some missing last time because I had a couple people, I know for a fact that we didn't have them all last time.
There were 2 that were missing. They came to me and they got lost in my email. They are now
Okay.
recognized and included in the
Or do
package
we
you
have
got
them now?
tonight. You do. Yes, you do.
Okay. And then Yeah, well, I guess Howard answered my question about the ordinance working group, because that, I don't understand. He held up a folder the last meeting and stated that there was work being done there, which I was a little uncomfortable with, since we don't have all the information from the public.
I think at the last meeting, he held up just a draft that he created on his own, and they didn't have.
Well, that's still,
Well, it's not it was just
A
it was a
timeframe.
very, very early list.
Inappropriate.
It was not a policy.
It,
And he said that they didn't have a meeting. So I do understand your point, and I do understand your concern.
it
I
is a
also don't wanna
concern, because that's,
going through the same discussion.
we're here
Was
to
it,
gather information.
was it a draft or was it a timeline?
No, it was a timeline.
Okay.
There is no draft.
all right. Are we
There's
ready?
not even a draft in my head.
Are we a draft? Are we a draft? Are we, anything else, Sherry, before we move?
Nope, not at this moment. Thank you,
Okay,
Jane.
all right. We are at 6 o'clock. We have several important things to do. The public comments summary, the assessment summary, and the schedule of task force activities. Given the conversation we've just had and the concerns about the process and the timeline of this task force, I would like to take number 8 and discuss it now, so that we can get some clarity for ourselves and for the public as to what I am proposing as a possible schedule between now and October of this year. And I hope everybody on the task force has had a chance to look at it.
This one.
Do we need a motion to move that item on the agenda?
Not really, if unless anybody objects.
I have, yes.
Yeah. Okay, everybody have it? So, let me start at the end with a goal that our report and our recommendations go to the select board in October. That means we will have worked for a calendar year. And hopefully we will have the time to do the necessary work so that we have something that we can take to them. Where we are now is in the assessment period. I think we've agreed with, at our last meeting, that that is something we need to complete. And it looks to me like that could take us into March. If we review the community survey on the 30th, look at any ordinances that you would like to bring to the task force, which is an exercise in learning from other towns on the coast of Maine in particular, similar enough to Harpswell, that we know what kind of regulation is out there. And we have some view of the world beyond our own selves. And then look to finalize the summary assessment by the end of March. So we are not taking a substantive report to the town meeting, because we won't have one. The second item is, we've been asked by, and I think this is in the email I sent to you, by the administration to have a committee task force report for the annual town report by the end of January. And this would be a relatively short, one page probably of that report. My view is what we can report now is what we've done, where we are, and something about how we plan to go forward. So it'd be more about how the task force is working than anything substantive.
What's that date?
January 30. Originally, it was going to be mid-February, I thought that we would have something to go to the town, but it's been moved up, or it's a different schedule that I was not aware of. And we'll come back to that and talk about how we put that together and how we have full review by the task force so that it is a consensus document. We've already agreed that we would do community meetings. We were looking to start those earlier than April, but on reflection, it occurred to me, one, we have to be complete with the assessment, because that's what major body of work that we have to share with the community. And the folks who leave Harpswell for the winter are usually back by early April, I think. Most of them are back, so we're not excluding them from the discussion. And then we would also present to the non-resident meeting in July. That meeting has many topics to it, so it's not a time where the task force would have an opportunity to talk about what we're doing and have a community meeting with that group, as we would be trying to have in April and May with the rest of the town. If anybody is confused or doesn't understand what I'm saying as we go along, stop me. We'll talk about it. Once the community meetings are over, we would review the feedback from them and a report outline, meaning the assessment report outline, in May, June, and presumably finish that by July. And that would include a summary of what we presented at the non-resident meeting. If we get there, and whatever this policy/education, we'll adapt our language internally, whatever that is, would be the basis of having community meetings over the summer, so that the non-residents have an opportunity to participate along with the residents. And that's a preliminary something or other, as far as we've gotten then. And we get feedback to that. The question mark coming next would be, do we recess the task force meetings in July and August, with the primary reason being because it is a very busy schedule for many who are on the task force, and that we focus on community meetings and gathering input from the community during that time. And of course, it would be important that task force members participate in that as they are able and have the time to do so. And then in September and October, we review what we know and what we've learned, where we are, and begin to develop the report and get feedback on the ideas in that report or the particular major directions, major things that we're coming up with. And then when we get that feedback and have a final review and sign off on that report, then it goes to the select board for their review and what they decide to do with it. Thoughts, questions, concerns?
So with the, for the timing, would the report be due in October? Our
recommendations, yeah, our recommendation, yeah, our
Or
report.
later?
Yeah, and that's putting it on a year schedule.
I have a question.
Yes?
For your assessment that needs to be done by January 30th, is that when you have to have your assessment?
No, the assessment would be done by the end of March. The 30th is the bringing before the full task force the results of the survey. So we'd be discussing the survey.
So that's only about the survey. Well, I'm just a little confused because in our paperwork, you have these pages assessing the nature and impact of STRs in Harpswell.
Mm-hmm.
Is that like part of your report?
That's part of what we would be reviewing by the end of March.
Okay.
Dur-
Well, there's
Between now
definitely-
and the end of March. And we'd be developing that further as we have further discussion and further input to it.
No, I think,
Because there's
well,
definitely some inaccuracies.
I think
That's
Sherry is referring to this document, which, did you say that's, the deadline for that is January
No.
30th for the town?
No.
Annual report?
No. What we
Okay, I
give to the
misunderstood.
town annual report hasn't been thought about, hasn't been written.
Oh, I
This
see.
is an internal document
Got it.
that's a working document that we're going to elaborate between January and the end of March. And we're going to correct inaccuracies, we're going to add information, we're
Okay.
going to come to as full an assessment as we possibly can do.
Thank you.
Okay?
Yeah.
I would definitely recess meetings July and August.
I'm with you.
Holy crap.
Are we not gonna have community meetings at that timeline as well, though?
We can have community
With the
meetings, yes.
non-residents, so we've
Well,
got
with
an involvement
anybody.
already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody in town, we will have
talking about
community
task force
meetings.
meeting.
But we're not having these meetings, so task force members' participation in community meetings would be optional. Those who can do it.
Can I ask a technical question about the community meetings? If I'm unable to attend all of them, which I assume I will be because it's summer and
Right.
busy, how does that, is it recorded similar to these meetings, or how would I get the information of what's discussed there? And just wondering what the practices has been of the town and the other task force that have been.
I don't believe any community meetings to this point in time have been recorded in any way. Denise is coming out. Yep. If you could Nellie, if you could hand her that.
I know that when the affordable housing had their community groups, we did record them.
You
And
did?
we have a new camera over here that's now portable, and we record right on it, so we will be recording them.
Oh, wonderful. Fabulous. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so they don't have to happen here at the town office, which I think is an advantage, taking it to people, okay? All right, anything else? Yes, Peter?
So pending, I guess, the select board's reaction to the motion we passed earlier, maybe this becomes instead of the policy group drafts report, it's the education/policy group, something like that.
We can organize it that way or any other way
Okay.
that people want to do it, sure. Anything else? Okay, we will move on. This will be our plan until it gets changed. Yes, sir.
Sorry.
And, go ahead. And
Did
we
you
do
wanna
need
say
to.
something?
Oh, I just, the first item on this possible schedule is the 22nd or the 30th, and I think that we had a quick conversation about confirming that it's the 30th.
Correct. Yes.
I was
It'll
gonna
be the
make the same
30th.
comment.
And we'll get it off the calendar for the 22nd. And we have not scheduled any meetings beyond the February 13th, I don't believe, have we?
No.
I don't think so,
calendar?
on the calendar, on the town calendar.
February's open yet.
It's not open yet, but we had it in our first original schedule. That could be looked at as to whether that's the right day in February to do it. Okay, let us move on and go back. Yes, ma'am.
With moving our timeline forward through to October, if we've got a easy check box like we filled out the first meeting with
First schedule.
for schedule, the sooner we can do that, the better, I think, for everybody to, if anybody has any idea when they're available.
So we
That's
will do
funny.
that as much as possible. And I guess you raise a question that I had in the back of my mind is how often this task force wants to meet as a full group. We have been on a very tight schedule, as you know, and a lot of concern about that, which I respect. We could meet
Maybe monthly? Is that?
once a month. That means we're going to have, the working groups will have work time in between and will bring to us their products. And this task force then at those meetings will review those products with as much advance, having been sent out to you by email ahead of time, but we review them and either approve them or send them back to the working group. So these meetings will be more not looking at all the details, but saying, is this product what we can agree is the appropriate thing to move us to the next step? Okay? Yeah, and those who would like to have the details, as has been mentioned already, can come to any of the working group meetings.
Will we have a schedule of those?
Indeed.
Will that be
They'll be on the,
shared?
they'll be on the calendar. There'll be public meetings just like this is. Yes, Bob?
Sorry, I should have brought this up earlier, but Grow Smart Maine has a seminar, maybe this Friday, on STRs. And it's a group that's done good for the state, but it is a fee. I signed up because I just want to learn, but others can avail of it. It's Grow Smart Maine.
Grow Smart.
Grow, Grow.
Yep.
If you want to
I
give
think
the
it's only
link,
an hour and a half session.
if you want to get,
But,
Virtual.
it's gonna be a web,
It's
based.
a webinar.
so
Yeah.
Bob, if you would give the link to.
I don't
Deni-
have anything on me to do
Well,
that, but I can.
Email
when
it
I
to
get home.
Denise,
Yeah,
and Denise can send it out to everybody.
no problem, thank you.
Okay, thank you for mentioning that. That's Friday?
I think it is. I mean, I
Friday is the
rely on
11th,
my
yeah.
calendar, sorry,
Yeah.
and I don't have it.
Thursday's the
Thank you.
Okay, all right. So, shall we move on? Okay. I'm going to move to the public comment. You all have the two-pager, I think, summary that I put together, and the emails themselves. We had 13 comments from 10 different people. And I'm going to read it out loud for those who are sitting with us and for the video and the public at large. The first two are out of order. They're the comments about the survey itself, which I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting. One correction is the first one was not 12/28, it's the 2nd of January that it came in. And that's the concern that it does not preclude multiple submissions from individuals. The second was the complaint about the long link as a way to access the online survey. The others are about short-term rentals, the task force work, and so on. On the 28th, someone in the Ash Point Road area said he discovered many STRs within walking distance, and he had never witnessed any problems. In fact, didn't realize they were there until he started looking for friends who were coming to visit. Is concerned about the positive negative effect on town actions, of the town actions on STR-related employment. Sees no relationship between this short-term rental and housing affordability. Sees no need for regulation given the task force work so far. Urges slow process with full opportunity for affected parties to voice their opinion, and advocates ballot over town meeting vote. On the 1st of January, a third-generation homeowner on Harpswell Neck is concerned that regulation would raise short-term rents and decrease the number of renters, make them more unaffordable, would have a negative effect on owners as a consequence, and would become, quote, a nightmare for property managers to keep up with regulations and put the property managers out of work without renters. There would be less income to the tourist industry. This individual believes it is not the business of the town of Harpswell or yours to know how many renters I have in my home or the number of days I have my home rented. No one regulating owners of, quote, eyesore properties to clean them up. The survey should be out in summer for seasonal owners. It is not broke, so please stop trying to control it. Let me clarify, the survey went out to all non-resident property owners in a postcard. So they have been included. On the 2nd of January, there was feedback on the survey. Questions and options were very leading, biased, and incomplete. This individual asked what data the town has regarding benefits to the town and the quantity of incidents, effects on town services. Goes on to comment that the Freeport process, which adopted registration policy and self-certification to ensure compliance with existing code requirements. This individual thinks it's yielded good results in a model that would help Harpswell collect data and facts. His family has owned the property since the 1950s and rents when not used by family. Hopes the benefits of STRs are not lost. Again, on the 2nd, another email was in support of her husband's comments made on 1228, the Ash Point area one, amplifying that public safety, employment, and fair access to stakeholders and voters to adequately consider this matter and exercise their concerns and rights. Comments on the positive economic, this individual made comments on the positive economic impacts like fishing, shops, and so forth. Requests a slow, methodical approach to analyzing positive aspects of STRs. Actions to alter current state of businesses be taken only after allowing all property owners have adequate time and access to express their opinions. On the 4th, a 20-year homeowner in Cundy's Harbor acknowledges the need for affordable housing and believes that STRs do not affect affordability. This individual also acknowledges the positive impact of STR for owners and local businesses. Local residents deserve to be protected from any negative impacts, but the vast majority of renters tend to be relatively quiet and respectful. Don't see problems or need for, quote, instituting a complicated set of policies to regulate these properties, which would increase town bureaucracy. Again, on the 4th, a property manager requests that several items be added to our process. 1, whether all emails are read in meetings. Some of hers have not. I'll come to that later. Inconsistency in responses to public input at meetings, sometimes responded to and sometimes not. Question about what the item concerning trash was trying to ask. Also, on that question of road wear and tear, what is the connection to rentals was the question. And then on safety, why consider when property managers take care of this? Why not for non-rented second properties, guest properties? If rentals are being registered, shouldn't second homes not be rented, which are not rented, also be registered? Education, the point has been made in the meeting, has been raised by this individual and task force members. Why is it not being discussed? On the 4th, the same individual shared that the Maine tourism report shows that rentals have gone down from 2022 to 2023 on a statewide basis. And then when I reviewed emails in my inbox, I found 2 of this individual's that had not been shared at our earlier meeting. On the 6th of December, this individual shared information on how to find the legal definition of a vacation rental. And on the 12th of December, hopes that the task force will seek professional help with the survey and question whether Granicus would be marketing their services or had they been hired. For those who don't know, that webinar did not happen. It was canceled and no one has been hired. On the 4th, we had another email from the owner of the STR who worked with a property management company for 30 years. And this individual asked questions about oversight rules and the town raising money. How would we oversee short-term rentals not working with rental property managers? Notes that town staff have not raised major issues, so why are we concerned? Trash is a potential problem. How can that be a problem when rental agencies use trash haulers? Comment on the survey that is not focus on positive impact of rental business in town. And the last point was based on my line of questions, why would you want to add costs and apparently unneeded rules that will make it more difficult to manage our own balance sheets? On the 8th, excuse me, a short-term rental owner questions the need for rules and regulations. This individual also works with a property manager and is taking necessary steps to ensure that well, septic, etc. meet codes. The individual mentions the support of the property mentions the good support of the property manager and the incentive of internet sites to encourage return visits and property maintenance. There were comments critical of the task force timeline and the, quote, poorly worded survey. As an experienced survey developer, which this individual is, she also requests that business owners in Harpswell and nearby commercial areas be surveyed, ask for attention to potential unintended outcomes, and does not want imposition of unnecessary and not well thought out rules or regulations. So that's the summary. Does anyone on the task force want to comment on that? Okay. And I ran out of water, so I apologize for my mouth being dry and mumbling somewhat. So let's, we're at 6:25. Let's take some time then to have any discussion you'd like to have on this assessing the nature and impact of STRs in Harpswell. This is something I put together, excuse me, with the information that I gleaned from our meetings and from some of the handouts that came to us as we've gone through the process so far. I won't go through it. I'll just, for the benefit of the public, the first section is about what we know about STRs in Harpswell. The second section is the policy context, which is basically a summary of the report that Howard made at an earlier meeting. The third section is the town official's perspective, and I had a, thank you, oh, thank you so much. I had a phone conversation with Chuck, so the last bullet, recycling transfer station manager, was alluded to that the problems there had been solved, I think, by Tim in an early meeting. Chuck confirmed that he has worked with the haulers who now regularly use the transfer station rather than the recycling center for STR trash. He's not concerned about trash at the recycling center or the transfer station at this time. Then there is a section on community perspectives, which is a further summarized, highly summarized comments about STRs, their impact on the town and regulation, and then a second section on the comments that the task force has received about its work. And then the last section would be community survey, which is in process. So, anything you'd like to raise about this, or
Yeah. I
about
did-
what's here, and then second, about what's not here and what we might think about as further due diligence?
I
Sherry,
did
yes.
notice a few things that seemed inaccurate. Is this an appropriate time
Sure.
to?
Yeah.
The air DNA figures that you have on here, I think they might need to be re-examined a little bit. They don't match what we had, what Bruce handed out that day, and what what's online.
I can speak to
Yeah.
one of those things if I
Sure.
can. And it's not just a little misleading, it's very misleading. So the air DNA numbers that I did give you, at the bottom bullet says total annual revenue was 97.9, and that air DNA takes owners' weeks. We call them owners' weeks. So let's say we have a property owner, most of our properties have, the property owners are using those
We
properties.
block them off.
And they'll block those weeks off, so, I would say 80% of our properties have this, something like this going on, so they'll block off 2 weeks. Air DNA reads that as producing income those 2 weeks.
Okay. Got it.
Sometimes we'll block off whole, 5 months of the winter.
Yeah.
That property's not generating any revenue, but Air DNA is saying, they're getting 20 weeks of rental
Okay,
income.
so we just take that out.
That's a bad
That's
number,
not,
yeah.
we just take that out.
So, Chair, I didn't mean to step on you, but
No.
that's,
Thank you.
Okay, that was a number on those sheets, which I assumed meant they were actually rented, yeah. Okay,
If I may, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my perception of what I saw with the air DNA information is that not only is the way they are compiling their information generally inaccurate to actually how it's being used, but also the months and the time period that we took the air DNA information was a very small piece of time and space, and not necessarily a good representation of real numbers of anything real. That was it was like, this is a source that's out there, and
Yeah.
these numbers don't make sense to me.
it works on Cape Cod, but it doesn't necessarily work.
Right. And as far as like using a lot of my feeling at the end of our conversation when Bruce presented that particular source of information was that source didn't feel credible for our conversation.
because, can you say,
Because of the short time period that information was drawn from, and also the way they compiled their percentages and their numbers doesn't seem accurate.
Well, what's it, a snapshot in time type of data and not an ongoing?
Right,
Sure.
right.
So there were nuances to the numbers.
If that,
understood, it is definitely a snapshot.
Yeah.
And it would be different
it
if it was
doesn't
done
feel
today.
like an accurate
or-
snapshot with
It's
with
not
the
for
way
the
it was
whole thing,
presented.
yeah.
From the company, from the Air DNA, how they present their information.
So,
Does that seem fair? That was my understanding of how I processed that particular information in my compiling of facts.
And I
Is
mean,
there a way
we
it-
could reach out to all the property managers, and, I mean, it's pretty simple to give you how many days we have rented for the year as well.
that
I
might
mean,
be, let's talk
there's
about what
useful
would be useful,
information that we
because,
can share,
Yeah, interesting way to outreach,
you know, I
absolutely.
mean,
so
it's
let's
easy
talk
enough
about,
to.
let's talk about
An occupancy rate.
an occupancy
Yeah.
rate
Mhm.
from, but if it's correct that the property managers cover
Because, I
a
mean,
third
we want to
of,
know about this area here.
Right.
Just here.
Well, even that
It's a
third, I mean, that number did come from me, but I
Yeah.
mean, that is a swag if there ever was one, so.
No, well, it's like, but you were helping collect information.
okay, so there would be a segment under property management that you all would be able to, occupancy data? Anything else that we would want to have that would be useful, that you
Number.
could give us? Number of,
Number of properties that you
Properties.
manage.
Yeah, so again, we're gonna be able to give you what we have,
Right.
Yeah,
and then
but
we're
if-
gonna base it that we have, when I saw this number, I asked around to the other property managers, and I got 30s, 33, 30, 40. So, maybe it's 40%. So if we give you a number that's, 200, does that mean there's 500, or does that mean there's?
The air DNA numbers seem wrong. Okay, that's clear. You can't have 42% occupancy in January here in Maine.
Right,
Period.
exactly. Well, so it's reading blocked off week, it's reading,
Right.
we're not renting it, we're blocking it off, it's reading that it's
Right,
filled.
so give us what you got.
Yeah.
And we'll try to extrapolate it and say, if you guys represent a third, or if you represent 20% of them, I mean, there are a whole lot of, I know that my recollection is that when I looked at it in last July, and I counted up the number of advertisements on one week on VRBO and Airbnb, and I subtracted the duplicates, because some people do both. It was well over 450 was the number I came to, of different properties. And then I knew on top of that, that places like the Auburn Colony, they don't ever do those. They're not looking to, they have people that come back forever, family-type operation. I'm sure yours is the same situation. You're gonna fill that up without ever having gone on an internet site and paid a commission. And probably without a manager too, but I don't know that.
So,
I have some in the Auburn Colony.
Yeah.
So-
Okay, so maybe
Yeah, absolutely.
that's different, but I think you can give us the Harpswell, as much Harpswell information as you possibly can, and then we'll try to figure out what the universe is here.
The
think-
survey may give us an indication as well.
Because the numbers that we got from what's the Mid-Coast Policy Group?
yes.
They were way
MCOG,
lower.
it was 4% and 7%.
Yeah.
7%
Yeah,
from,
but then
and they
again,
used DNA.
But then again, that's of, the number that they were using for the housing stock was off, because,
Of the definition they used.
well, but they used the American Home Survey, which is part of the census, which is, if you're not there on April 1st, they don't count you.
Okay, you don't
So-
exist, okay.
It doesn't much matter,
So
think we-
the question
I think
is,
we've
how do we
I
get
think-
useful data?
Yeah, I think that part of what we're doing is, collecting what data we can, and we have different sources here, and we've done some work at that, and we continue to do work, and I think that a part of what's important of what we do is deciphering that, and
So how?
not
yeah.
to say that that information isn't there. This is something we discussed. This is information that's there. It's just, that's how I feel about that information.
So what would be available from property managers? What kind of information could come? Because we're not going to have a real an inventory count of anything in Harpswell.
And
because
also, what would
it's not
property
open.
managers be willing, and what is the most important information that we would be for our education and policy development, and/or policy and development? What and what information would be appropriate to share? I mean, there's private information
Sure.
that is nobody's business, like.
Sure.
Well, I certainly think we can give you the numbers of properties that we have and occupancy rates.
average daily rental? Weekly rental?
Do we have a reason?
Average-
Why do we?
average
why-
Yeah.
Why would you need to know?
Yeah.
Well, that, you're focusing some of the attention on the economics of that, of those things, and if we can get an idea of the economic impact
It's the
to
fact that
the
people here in
town, to
Harpswell
the people that
spending
are
money.
renting these, that's bolsters the, that part of the equation. I mean, then an economist could say, well, if the short-term rentals are bringing in X hundreds of thousands of dollars, then the multiplier effect, there's a really simple way to get a multiplier effect in a place like this. And that shows, you're buying things locally, the people are going to restaurants locally, they're going to the shops, right? And so that multiplies that economic impact. So we're trying to get a handle on what the economic impact is to Harpswell.
So,
Those are things that somebody can figure out once we know what the, how many units there are in general. And we're never gonna get specific until,
I'm happy to be specific about that. I'm a little less happy about being specific about what we're getting for rent.
That's the owner's
But it's-
information, that's,
Isn't it public record, though?
Yeah,
On
you
your
can go on,
Airbnb
sure, yeah,
list?
Yeah,
you
you
can
can
go
go
online.
on
We,
website.
we,
where they pull it
we have software now that books at a different rate, just like Marriott does. So you could book one of our properties today, and it would be so much a week. Next week, you could go to that same property and try to book it, and it would change. So it's like, it's a moving target. It's really hard to
in the nights
give
of the
you.
week.
so
over.
maybe I could, in the interest of time, because we do need to have time for public
Yeah, certainly.
comment, suggest that those on the task force and those who are in the community, who are property managers, share with each other, get together, what can you share? And however you choose to put it together in one package,
And
do
I
that
would,
and bring it to us.
and certainly with this community outreach, like, really, we are asking for help from the people in the community, and that includes the people in the business and the people that live here, and things, the comment section of the survey, all of those things, like, if there's information that we aren't thinking about, that you want to bring to us, that the people want to bring to us, I think that they should be encouraged. Again, we've got the emails and,
Yeah,
But-
hopefully that's,
but-
they're doing that.
yeah, absolutely. But yeah.
Right.
If we're
All
saying, hey,
information,
property
yeah.
owners and managers, if you would be willing to share that information with us, please send it forth. We'd love to have that in our,
Jane, is it worthy of a subcommittee?
well, no.
I think let's keep it less formal than that,
I
and
don't know. There's people with much more greater knowledge of it than I, but
Yes.
the presentation is warranted for the good of the committee. It's nothing I have. I don't know the numbers.
no, of course nor do others of us. I
don't
would,
know the vacancy, I don't know the occupancy, I don't know I don't even know that I care about
I think what
the actual dollar.
I'm trying to suggest is that the property managers organize themselves in a way
That's a great idea,
that-
and that way I
that
won't
you
commit
can-
anybody to anything that.
you can put together what you feel comfortable sharing and that you think is going to be useful to the task force. Your suggestion that anybody and everybody in town who has information to share do the same is
Like,
wonderful.
gosh, I've got
Yeah.
one STR and I rent it out, I'm just as an example, off the cuff, not actual thing. One STR that I rent out for the whole summer to one person.
Mhm.
Let us know. That'd be great.
That's a long-term rental, I like that.
Well, it's
It's a
a short-term
vacation
rental in the definition of long-term rentals. So, it's,
So, yes, any and all information would be very welcome. So,
I mean, if somebody rented a house for the summer to the same people,
It's not technical.
it's
That's
not
not a
technically
short-term
short-term
rental.
rental.
Right.
No
No,
one's-
it's not. But
But I get what
Anything
you're
over
saying.
you're
30
saying,
days.
yeah, that,
I thought we were talking about
But is-
30.
but is
She is, she's just
Less.
giving an
She's
example
giving
of some,
a
you know,
hypothetical.
something that's doesn't fit in the box.
sorry.
okay. So, and I also think, this is from you, Bruce, I take it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is, we had talked earlier about property managers sharing the information that they send to their clients and the standards that they suggest. So that's the other thing that we've been talking about, how do we learn what the standards are that are industry standards for short-term rentals. And so any other information that anyone has about that is also welcome, so we can put that together. Okay, anything else on this assessment thing for now? Yeah. And then we're gonna
There
have
is
to.
more.
We will be, we're 20 minutes to 7. So let me get the task force's sense of how we use the time we have left. We have public here. Let me also say how many people in the public wish to speak. 1, 2, 3,
Don't know yet.
maybe 4. Okay.
I'm happy to send my comments around to the whole group. I don't have to verbally do them now.
Unfortunately, the
Oh,
guidelines for the
sorry.
committee
Can't do
doesn't
that?
allow us
Oh,
to do
sorry.
that.
Okay,
So,
well.
so I think sharing.
Or I
the-
can do them at the next meeting, or I can do them now.
We will
whatever you
have
want.
time, we will have time. Sherry, why don't you
Quick.
finish, and then let's see, and let's leave the last 10 minutes for public comment.
And then the Harpswell's Housing Task Force study concludes that there is considerable concern that STRs negatively influence long-term rental availability. This has been, I think that that's just harshly worded. Bob has mentioned multiple times that, you know, that's not true. In the anchor, there was also a little clip that said, there are also ongoing discussions about whether Harpswell should regulate or restrict short-term rentals, although there is evidence it wouldn't do much to make homes more affordable.
Yes, and I think that
This is
two
different.
things, there's availability and affordability, and I think it's been determined, and we have come to the, I think, consensus that short-term rentals have little, if any, effect on affordability. The question of availability is up in the air, I think. We don't have.
So you're talking about the question of long-term rentals? is
Yeah,
it?
so
I don't think that it is, but I mean, that is.
we haven't yet found an answer to that, so that may be one question that we want to look into more deeply.
And then under policy context, where it states, state regulates long-term rentals, lodging, hotel, and then, but not STRs. STR regulation is left to municipalities. State law does, we have to have at least smoke detectors, CO2, and natural gas in all STRs. That's a state law. So, you know, not everything is left to town,
That's
because
the-
some laws are already in place.
That's the one up
That's my
above
only-
that says state
Standards.
standards for safety building codes. That's where the smoke detector laws are, and they apply to every house, it's not just an STR.
Okay,
Exactly. Town government has a duty to protect the safety and welfare of individuals and the community. Absolutely. But is there proof that that's not already happening? I mean, we take care of,
where,
in all of our homes, even just residential, that should be important. And then under town officials, codes office concerned about septic water quality. When Tim was here, he mentioned that there was one incident in 3 years of septic. And insurance companies do come and inspect our rental properties before they will insure the rental insurance for the homeowner. Sheriffs are aware of isolated incidents of noise, partying, or parking issues. We had just a few calls when Bradbury was in here, and he had no idea if they were STR related or just people, you know, in the community.
that was.
I think that's just a little misleading, because we don't have a lot of issues.
I think that does imply that the sheriff, the sheriff considers STR as the source of those things, and I don't think he gave us that.
He
No.
may not have, in a conversation I had with him, there are a couple of instances where there are regular calls in neighborhoods to short-term rental properties, but very few, very few.
He didn't.
That's not what he said in the
He didn't
meeting.
say that
That's
when
not what he said in the
was
meeting,
here.
where we can ask him
I had
to,
a private phone call with him, and I had the exact opposite.
He
He
said he
had
didn't
not
know
a
where,
problem.
I think there were 4 noise complaints, but he didn't know where they came from.
well,
I mean,
okay.
he didn't
We
know
can
if
ask
they
him-
were STRs or not.
I'm sure he would come back.
We can ask him to come back. We'll ask him to, ask him to clarify. Okay.
And the fire and emergency personnel can advise need for safety occupancy review based on emergency calls. When Mike was here, he said that he spoke of one issue, which was in West Bath, that it would have been helpful to have information inside the home to call a homeowner or property manager when he had to cut the power to the house. He had no issues here since he's been working here.
I think he did say, though, it'd be helpful to have a resource or a registry if we decided to make one, just as a tool, but it wasn't necessary.
Everybody's contact everybody has my contact information the second they book with me, and
Okay.
then it's in the homes. And again, just the registry could help identify need and provide means. Education can be made available without a registry. And you already touched on Chuck saying that there's no issue. Those are some things that I found in there, going over it quickly.
All right, this is a working document. It'll get,
I got one quick comment, I'll try to
Sure.
make it quick. So, on the first page, ownership is by resident owners, non-resident owners, and investors. So investors are that, we all love to hate investors. And I think it doesn't matter who you are, if you're an owner or a non-resident owner, you're an investor. So, I mean, we're getting, we've painted investors as, the guy from Texas who owns 5 Airbnbs and he's getting a weekly paycheck, and, I know of investors who are, they're working hard every day, they're here in town, they have a family property, and they made an investment in that property to hold on to it for the family, and so I don't think, that if you own a piece of property, you're an investor. I don't think we should make the distinction.
okay, noted. All right, Peter, I'm going to give you a few minutes.
Okay, I'll try to be
So I really
I'll try
do
be
want to
quick
make,
also.
not cut off all of the time we have for public
Yeah.
comment.
I was confused by the thing about the negative influence on long-term rental availability, and then the very next bullet being, STRs do not materially affect housing affordability, because the two to me seem intimately related. Availability and affordability are two sides of the same coin. So I just think that needs greater clarification. It just came off confusing to me, those two bullets right one after the other.
Okay.
In the policy context, state standards for safety, building code, and taxation apply to STRs, right? That's what you just said.
Yes.
State standards, yes. So it
Safety
seems to me
building.
that, and then to go and say, the state doesn't regulate STRs, again, is confusing, because the state does regulate safety, and safety is one of the major concerns we have. So I think, again, we should clarify, the state does regulate safety, building codes, taxation for all entities, including STRs. There may be other things that the state doesn't regulate in terms of, but those are regulated by the state, so that should be
Okay.
clarified.
Okay.
And I think that was it. I think Sherry covered the other ones I had.
Okay, Good, thank you all. So what this raises in the last point that you made, Peter, is needing to further clarify what the knowledge out there is about relationship, if any, of STRs to both availability and affordability. That's a small research project. Would you like to take it on?
I don't think that's a small research project. I think, yeah, I mean, I'm happy to explore it a little bit more if you want, but, I mean, I think, didn't the housing group look at this extensively, and
We are short-term rental.
yeah,
Task
yeah,
force,
and I think
not
we
a
kind of
housing
decided to
task
leave
force.
this off to the side, not get into this. Based on, that earlier meeting we had, I think we
Keeps
actually
coming
even,
back around.
we
are
voted to
short-term.
say, let's, this is not an issue.
Affordability, we're not going to do. What about availability? Or the housing
The only
task force,
thing
what
that
do you have?
is still sitting out there as an unknown is short-term affecting long-term rentals. And because possibly, and I say pre-COVID, or we take some of these legacies, have been long-term, not short-term. And is that changed abruptly since Airbnb came around? We don't know that, and I don't know that. I don't have the information to give you. And I don't really think it's that much of an impact.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
we voted, I thought we actually voted on this, that this is not an issue
I mean, I'd
that
love to
we're
give you
gonna
a statistic, I
deal with.
can't. I
Okay,
think there's been an impact, maybe over a 10-year period, but if we're talking the last 3 years, I don't think it's there.
okay. So I think what
Prices
I'm
have gone
hearing
up.
is that we just leave this whole conversation out of our conversation, both on availability and
Well, I
affordability.
don't think we
That's
have
a
the
good
data
idea.
yet.
You know.
I don't think it's an
If
impact.
somebody wants to bring that data in, I mean, I thought that was part of a mid-coast planning group study, and that's what they concluded, but who knows?
But I thought we also talked about this in an earlier meeting, and and there was actually a vote, and then I raised an issue.
No, that was about affordability.
It was affordability.
We took a vote on
Wasn't it
affordability.
obtainable housing?
Yeah, it was, yeah, attainable means availability and affordability, that's exactly what it means, I think. So
All
I
right,
think we've
let's-
addressed it, and we ought to
let's-
go back and
let's-
look at what we
yeah.
already agreed to.
Let's leave it for now, okay? And I will take responsibility for looking at that and making some suggestion. All right, time for public comment. Who would like to go first?
Hi, Emily Wood, property manager.
Excuse me, sorry.
No, appreciate it. Thank you, Bruce, for bringing up my point from a couple of meetings ago. I really appreciate it. And another note, to kind of propose, would it be beneficial for property managers to have a meeting with someone on the board and to present it to the board? So, because you've all been asking for all this information and we're giving it to you in these meetings, and a lot of the time it gets dismissed or cut off. So we're the ones with the actual info. So I don't know how you'd really want that presented.
Well, I think that what I suggested earlier is that we've got two property managers on the task force. If they organize with anyone else in town who wants to participate, that you put it all together and bring it, and one of the task force members would bring it and present it here.
Perfect.
Is that,
That sounds good.
works for you?
And,
Okay.
Bethany, to your point about the educational, perhaps maybe how profitable short-term rentals are to the economy here. And to make a point of that, in 2022, $8.6 billion was spent just in tourism in the whole state of Maine, providing 151,000 jobs. And I think, Bruce, who's ever's good with the numbers, break that down to just Harpswell, because it really is quite profitable. It also, visitors to state saved every Maine household up to $2,172 in state and local taxes. So to say that SGRs could be a problem, I think the numbers actually show that it's very profitable and good to the town and the community. And back to the fire regulation and fire concern, Mike Drake, when he was here, said he would just need a number provided for there any emergencies or anything. In all my properties, I feel like we're going the same thing over and over. And for who I manage and who I work for as managers, our numbers are in a welcome packet. They're taped to the fridge, stapled to a bulletin board, they're on the windows, that this is the contact number to reach if anything were to happen. So we go in and we make sure that's all covered. And it's a little concerning that we're still not kind of at that level yet, this far down in the meeting. But I'll speak a little bit from the heart here. It's really not fun to have your money and your profit almost gambled at a meeting when I don't even know the catalyst. No one has been able to tell me what started STR's task force. What was the thought? What was the origin? What was the birth? What was probable cause? What was the cause and effect? That has yet to be unraveled or seen here as the people who work this job. So those are just my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a good question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sure. Just say your name and.
I'm Eric Lusk from Harpswell Neck, and I don't own my house in every sense of the word. We paid for it, we live in it, but if we don't pay our property taxes, the town gets to take it. I don't get to do anything I want with our house. We have certain activities that we can do with it that are considered permissible given the zoning, but I can't do anything I want with it. Something I can do currently is to rent out my house if I so choose. I haven't heard any problem that having more regulation of short-term rentals is going to fix. I don't hear of overflowing septic tanks from short-term rentals. I don't hear of out-of-towners creating a whole bunch of emergency rides for Harpswell Neck Fire and Rescue, where I was a driver 4 years on the 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift. We did fish out some locals who had been obviously overserved, but it was never the out-of-towners that were the issue. I have, thanks to my wife, become a big fan of Airbnb. We have a great rating as tenants. We really want to hang on to that great rating as tenants because we want people to let us rent their place anywhere across the planet. And we did a bunch of Airbnbs this fall. Italy, Rome, Spain. It was terrific. And all of those places want to make sure that people who can pay the freight, such as my wife and I, want to come stay in their places. So they do a good job of maintaining them. There are a bunch of property managers in here who want to make sure that their clients can get a pile of rent if they rent out their house for the month of August or September. So we don't seem to have a maintenance issue. Then we get over to the affordable housing issue. Show me some of these houses that might otherwise have been rented out to the person who was working as a stern man out of Mackerel Cove. Show me that house. I live next door to High Head Road. There's 80 homes in there. Half of them are empty for 6 months and a day every year. None of those homes was ever going to be a 6-month rental to somebody who was working at Cook's Lobster House. Those places are boarded up, they're shut up. If you want to do something about affordable housing, you may have to go after zoning. You may have to reconfigure what you want to do with zoning, but I'm not sure that's going to fix it either, because I know what it costs per square foot roughly within a range to put something together. In the 11 years I have lived in Harpswell, I have seen one trailer home go up. One trailer home in 11 years, and I'm pretty confident that was a piece of land that was given to somebody. Most of the land in Harpswell, let's face it, is going to have some kind of access to the ocean or view of the ocean, and that's going to drive up the price. There is a very real probability the people who are going to work in Harpswell in jobs that are more of the blue-collar range are probably going to live in Brunswick, Topsom, Bath. The real estate in Harpswell is expensive, and it's expensive for a very specific reason. We're oceanfront. There was a great article by Craig Anderson. Craig, I'm not trying to suck up to you here, in the Harpswell Anchor covering that whole topic. There were some great comments by some of you that were referred to in the article in the Anchor. I don't think regulating short-term rentals is going to get at that problem either. There's an old adage that I want to leave you with, which is namely, when the only tool you have is a hammer, everything has a habit of looking like a nail. When I go talking with people in government, when I go talking with people on committees, they have this idea there's a rule or a regulation they can come up with that is going to fix the problem. And very often, some of these problems are going to be self-correcting. I spent 3 years on the school board. I was on the policy committee. It's terrifying. The unintended consequences that come out of these things on policy are really staggering. The less you can regulate, the less you can step into other people's lives, I think the better. And very often, government entities need to resist the temptation to come up with a new rule, law, or ordinance. Last thought for today, and I'm sure I'll have more later. I find it interesting that we're trying to get into all kinds of people's business. How much do you make? How much are you renting it out for? Wait a minute. Hold on, guys. These are people's private homes. Why do they have to tell some committee or government about their personal business? People do have a right to privacy. I wish very much that everybody resists the temptation to stick their nose into other people's business when it isn't apparently solving any problems.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Heather Allen, live in Cundy's Harbor, own Your Island Connection, a rental agency. I have a lot of different topics actually to talk about. So just to kind of piggyback on something said first was about the reason that we're here. I initially heard that we were here for safety. I think I've said this every time I've spoke. We're never going to have anyone say we don't want to be safe. All of us want to. That's how we actually have a Sunday off in the summer, is if we keep our houses safe. It feels like when we found that there was no safety complaints, we moved on to fireworks, trash, wear and tear on roads. I asked questions before the survey about that and was not given any answers. I emailed and was not given any answers. The survey got voted. Still, my question, we're talking about safety, now we talk about this other stuff. How does the public get input and actually get responses? Because my email was read tonight, but I still don't have an answer to how you are going to differentiate between wear and tear if I have someone come clean my house or if it's a short-term rental. So they check yes on wear and tear. There were so many issues with the survey, which I tried to bring up before the survey went out, but there's no response from many of you. That's really concerning as a public citizen in the town of Harpswell. I would also like to note that some of my other concerns are we can ask the same questions and get very different answers on any given different day, which makes the process feel really untrustworthy. I heard earlier, Jane, that you said the social scientists only looked at the scale of the survey. In an email to you, when I asked about the survey before being voted on and who helped write it, you wrote, and I quote, on 12/12, I drafted the survey with input from an experienced professional. So which is it? Did they only look at the scale? Did they help you write it? Those are concerns that we have, that we need answers to. If you want the town to be able to have proper input, you have to disclose the truth, and you have to have the same story. Last week, in the video, I can't quote Howard because I have to go back and watch it, but he definitely, after discussing vertigo, held up a folder and said he was drafting an ordinance. Mm-hmm. Tonight, he said that is not happening. It doesn't matter to me which it is, but which is it? Let's get the truth out either direction. Who helped write it? Are you writing a survey? Are you writing an ordinance? We need honesty here. The one question I have that I would really like to be discussed at some point that I keep asking every week is, how are you going to reach people that are not property managers? Great, we're going to get together, we're going to meet with Bruce. It's a fabulous idea. We've already decided that there's probably about 30% from professional managers. How are you reaching the other 70? I've asked it every single week. Sorry, I missed a meeting, actually. I didn't ask it then. I've emailed 6 times, not gotten a response. It's not been put on the discussion for you guys all to discuss. So how does one in the public get you to have those important discussions? I was told there is no debate when you come up here. Totally understandable. I've been on plenty of task force, lots of boards, except that a lot of other people get answers. It just depends who you are standing up here. That's also super frustrating and really, really disrespectful. My last piece, which is probably unnecessary, but I'm going to hand it out anyway because you guys already discussed it, was that I pulled together some stuff from Air DNA to explain why it's so inaccurate. Unfortunately, I also have 3 teenage girls who hid the stapler on me before I left. So I'm just going to walk around and hand you a packet. I won't go through it, which is what my plan was, but you kind of covered it in your discussion earlier, but then you just have a reference. I used one of my examples in here of a rental and how inaccurate it is based on numbers, which is sort of what you referenced to. I'll pass those out. I do actually have one last thing. I'd like you to think about the effects that renters have to the town that makes them feel like they are also part of the town. I actually talked with Bruce this morning. Is it okay if I share a story that you told me about the Santa Fund? First, I had an employee who worked for me for several years. She actually stopped working for me when her husband passed away. In an emergency, he was driving, had a heart attack. We did a fundraiser, and of that fundraiser, we raised several thousands of dollars. She has 3 young boys. Of that amount, $20,000 came from renters who had come and visited, who had met her. Bruce told me today that Pam Douglas, who owns Pammy's ice cream shop, told him a story about renters coming to see her to get ice cream and donated $1,000, correct me, is that the correct number? $1,000 to the Santa Fund. And then they went home and sent more toys. So these people that we're talking about are part of our community.
I agree.
Even though you might not want to see that. Those are important discussions to have as well. They treat, honestly, they treat most of the houses better than the owners sometimes. Yep, thank you to my owners, but those are things that you need to remember. I've asked how we're reaching property managers. I'm going back to this, people that are not property managers, and how are we educating? If your real concern is safety, how are we educating other people, residents, non-residents that come here in the summer about septic and water concerns? Those are real concerns, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay if they showed up that there were problems in vacation rentals and we have to do something about it. So how are we reaching those people? I had a conversation with someone yesterday that a new person buys a house from New York City here. They don't know anything about septic and wells, nothing. They don't get my nice little flyer that I make for the rental house to be put into how to treat those systems. Again, education is key, in my opinion. I'm gonna walk around, try not to trip over the wire, and pass this out. I won't go through it, but I'm all done at that point.
Do you have any suggestions as to how to meet the other 70%?
I mean,
I asked because.
you could, no, I appreciate you asking that. I maybe hold a meeting, maybe email them to say, do you rent something? We're trying to collect data.
Do you think this summer we would obtain better results with that?
I don't think you will get them all to answer. Okay. I'm being honest. I don't think you will, but that's part of the, like, if that's what you're gonna do, I find it really unfair that I'm working the summer. I can't even describe to you the stuff you get phone calls about. It's mostly internet, sadly, but I don't have.
5% of a group that taints the water for the rest.
Right, but are you the one that has septic running possibly down your road?
He did mention
The
that.
river.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so the other piece I want to say about Harpswell, because I've thought a lot about this and I've thought of you and debated, like, it snowed the other day. My husband most of you would probably meet and say, yeah, he's maybe not a very nice guy. He's very shy. He doesn't talk much. Little scary, got a scary face a little bit. But he drove around. I say that because I'm just being honest. He drives around and plows out older people that he knows can't get out. That's what Harpswell is about. I would want, if I lived down the road from you, you to come knock and be like, hey, is that yours? Because maybe that person doesn't even know that's happening. We're not New York City. We're Harpswell, and trust me, like it legit is the place where I can go across the street and knock on the door and ask for sugar. That's just how it is. So.
I know it always has been.
No, you get the paper cut.
Thank you for taking the time to do this.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Hold on, I thought I had 10. Yours is it. Huh?
I might have an extra here.
That's okay. I can get Bruce another copy if
No, I do have an extra.
It's because my. I will do it, yes.
Thank you.
Allison Hawks, Cundy's Harbor. I wasn't really gonna speak tonight, so I have a few concerns. My first one is that I kind of echo what Heather said. I wrote a letter December 12th, an email, and I still have gotten no response to that. And just the respectful thing to do is if the public is reaching out to you to at least say that I've gotten your email, and thank you for that. And I mean, we're almost a month past that, and I've still gotten no answer. I've gotten no answer about the legality of this, if we have reached out to town legal and gotten anything that says that this isn't gonna get us in hot water doing this, which I think that's probably where we should be starting. Is this even legal for us to do this? And the economic impact, that's probably one of the biggest things. And, you know, I can appreciate that you're asking professionals here too for their input, but is that the real professional way to gather the input that you're doing? You're asking task members to do jobs. You're also asking these subcommittees, which is completely inappropriate. If you're a task force, you're tasked with doing a job, and all of you should be sitting at the table with the same information. Sherry shouldn't have to ask him what he's doing, and Howard, you did. You absolutely did, because I got up and I asked you last meeting what you were talking about on this policy working group. It is absolutely putting the cart before the horse. The work plan, you haven't even brought that out once in any meeting I've been to look at. Are you working from a work plan? Where's your work plan? You have it on your website, and you haven't, all of you even discussed it together. What, and I'll just go to that first before I go on to the next thing. There's so many things to read and all of this stuff that, so your work plan. There's also concern that the trend toward STR may be having a negative impact on seasonal worker and affordable housing. And can we absolutely just put this to, can we never talk about this here again? Because it seems like we've said over and over again that this isn't a problem. And then you put at least one Harpswell business has built staff housing to address workhouse housing shortage, which is very unfair that you wrote this in here, because we all know the business that you're talking about, and you didn't talk to the business owner. I did, and he said this is an untrue statement. This is not, you're like, why we need policy, but you wrote in here it's for workforce and staffing shortages, and that's not the truth. He flat out said it's not the truth. And it's also convenient that you put in the middle of this work plan that you're not talking about with anybody. Additionally, without accurate current information on STR use, some properties may not be correctly valued for tax purposes. Ooh, okay. Now we're really getting down to what we want from people, right? We think that people that have more money, we should tax people that have more money. And that's a farce, that you think that people that have short-term rentals are making more money. Some people rent short-term rentals just to keep those properties in their family. Like, all of you assuming that people are making all this money off short-term rentals, you're guesstimating. And I know how you're guesstimating, because Jane, I'm sorry, but it's inappropriate for you to write assessing the nature of impacts and you wrote it. It's drafted by you, and there's so many inadequacies and not even legit numbers in here. There's estimated. You've got assumed, estimated, and then again, you put the Harpswell Task Force stuff in here again, which we've all said is not relevant anymore, and then contradict. This is the most contradicting thing I've seen, and it's inappropriate for you to write an assessment for the rest of everybody else. I want to say again that the subgroups are inappropriate. And we've heard Sherry mention it before, that you're promising things in a subcommittee group that should be discussed here. You can't change an agenda of a subcommittee group without putting it in the minutes. And you did that. The economic, you're not even talking, and Heather talked a little bit about it, the social impact. How is this going to impact us if we do something regulatory here that keeps people from coming here to rent and they just go to the next coastal community because they don't have to have the regulations? On your work plan that you have, you're talking about putting the ordinance and policy and the very first framework of your work. You haven't done any other work. You haven't gotten the surveys, and you're already talking about a policy and an ordinance again. It's inappropriate that you two know what you're working on as a policy group, and this is why it looks like there's an agenda, because there's 3 of you that are running this. And we've said, and he's actually said it over and over again, affordable housing, you're not going to solve it. Stop writing it in these summaries and assessments. You cannot lead everybody down the road. You have to get the information. You've said it. You just voted on it. Get all the information first. Stop estimating how many rentals there are. Find out for real. There's a real way to do it. You said you got a budget. Use it.
You don't have a budget.
You
never
said there
we
was
had-
money that you could do the surveys.
No, no.
Okay, again, you're contradicting yourself. You did say that. You said you had a budget that you dipped in. You might want to go back.
Excuse me, let me clarify that. The town has a budget for committees. That budget paid for the mailing and the printing in the Anchor. That was not an STR task force budget. So
So
let me
you
be
had
very
money
clear.
to put a survey out. So what I'm saying is if you want this to be professionally done, do it by professionals. You know, you've said social scientists. Christy wrote me an email back and said the staff wrote the survey. And then you guys keep talking about like, well, if it's bad, it's bad. I could go take the survey 14 times. How are you going to get accurate information from that? And you keep ignoring everyone that keeps saying that to you. Oh, it's fine. Oh, it's fine. No, do better. If you know there's a conflict, you can solve it here. Don't keep pushing people out that are actually bringing problems to you. You could solve the problems now before it becomes a really big problem. Listen to each other and do it respectfully. And if you haven't read your code of comments or committee guidelines, do it, because you break it. And so do the rest of a lot of you on this committee. Be more respectful to each other. It's very disheartening as the public to watch you be disrespectful just because someone disagrees with you. Get over it.
All right, does anybody else want to say anything from the public?
I do have one more quick thing to say. I would also just like to, Heather Allen, Cunnies Harbor, I would also just like to add, I heard a couple of things. I have to find my notebook. I don't remember, I'm sorry, exactly how it was said, but how will we know that this is the truth? And I would just be careful, as you are all being very anecdotal, that when you're reading an email that you're careful about deciding whether you think it's the truth or not.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Many of the questions that have been asked cannot be answered right now because they're no answers that we have. How do we get information? This is one, for example. How do we get information from the 70 or 60% that are not under property management? We'll find out how we do. We'll try to figure that out.
Jane, can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
Though, because
Yeah.
several times it was brought up that that we're not responding to written emails and comments. What is the, I mean, I wouldn't even know who would respond and who could speak for the committee. Were we thinking about responding? But what's the normal policy for the town about that? Because I'm not aware that
There is, I don't
respond.
think there is a particular policy.
And it's not,
I-
it shouldn't be taken.
I'm not,
we're
I
debating
just
it.
want to clarify that when I sent an email, I specifically asked to it be discussed here. So I just want to clarify that in case that helps your question. That's all I
Okay,
was doing.
Thank you. And I chose not to do that. That's,
Yeah,
yeah.
and
And
that's-
can I just say, you don't need a policy to respond to the public. That's just a respectful thing to do when people are inquiring and they have questions and they're confused, which a lot of us are. Every meeting we come to very confused. Clarify. That's just being a human being. You don't need a policy to do that.
Oh, I'm
Oh,
done.
so- Okay, all right. With that, we will adjourn the meeting, and we will.
Bruce has something to
continue-
say.
Oh, sorry, Bruce, I
Well,
didn't
so-
see you. I'm sorry, I didn't see.
I've asked the question, and I know that it's been brought up. I don't know yet if we've contacted the town's attorney and if there's been any feedback from the town's attorney. It seems like that is a question that we should be able to answer.
I agree. I've been asked that.
I know that's come up many times. I've personally asked for that.
And
I-
you're asking for it tonight. Let me.
I'm asking for
let
it
me
tonight.
respond. The attorneys have not been contacted, by my judgment, because we don't have anything yet to ask them. We don't have, there are ordinances in many towns in the state and around the country. They exist. But when we get to the place where we have something concrete to take to them to ask their opinion, then it would be appropriate to do. Unless you have a concern that I don't know about, that you would like us to ask them right now.
Well, it seems to me, I've heard somebody somewhere here has said perhaps we should have somebody who lives in the, if the property owner lives in the town, then they'll be allowed to do, maybe that's who we allow to rent property. I live in the town, so that's great for me, but that seems, that doesn't seem legal to me. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. So maybe there's some guidelines there that we could,
I think it's appropriate at the stage that we were getting in a position to, if we get there, to recommend a written ordinance to the select board. That's at the point where you would go to the town attorney and say, will you look at this and make sure that that's within our power? And that would be one of the questions that you would have. Are we still doing public comment?
Well, I'd like to clarify, because this is the question that I keep asking. And I'm a preventative type person. You don't wait till you've developed all the things that you want to do and then ask a lawyer and he's like, yeah, you can't do this, this, and this. Why can't you say, what parameters should we stay in? Are there things that we should stay away from? Has there been other lawsuits in town that we could learn from? Be preventative. Don't get all the way in and then decide that all the work that you've done, you have to ix it because the lawyer says you can't do it. Start with what the legal realm is, and then you go from there.
Is there a best practice of the town to when we seek out legal counsel?
Generally, it's when we have a clear question to ask them. That's the practice.
Just to finish up my
Yes.
thought,
Yeah.
it clearly would be an issue to determine whether or not you could have an ordinance that applied to non-residents and not to residents. So that would be clearly a legal issue that I would doubt would be valid.
well, somebody in this
wouldn't
group,
work.
voiced that position, so I just feel like perhaps an attorney might lay out a set of parameters that we can and can't do. Maybe I'm wrong, I just,
I think
I didn't have an answer, and it just seemed like it was odd that I could not generate a yes or no answer. Have we talked to the attorney?
I think that, you know, the town has another avenue to determine that, and that is that the staff can ask Maine Municipal for guidance on those kind of questions. They have a legal staff, they respond to the town, we're part of their membership. I think what you will find out when that happens is that there was at least one statute in Maine, the affordability statute, that specifically says the regulation of short-term rentals is left to the towns. I think that's what everybody believes has happened, and that the legislature has concluded that. And so that, you know, we could ask that question, but we can also have someone at the Maine Municipal just print out the reference and get it back to us so we can have that they are, you know, they get paid to do that for the towns. And, you know, they clearly are, and we're going to talk about that on February 13th, is here's what all of the other towns in the area are doing. And you'll see that, you know, you'll get a better idea from that discussion what really is the scope of the regulations, and they're all over the place. We already know that, and what they range for. And you know, we talked about one of them at the last meeting, which was the state agency that deals with the northern rural communities has its own short-term rental policy. And there are, you know, that would be part of the discussion on the 13th as well.
And I think something that is sometimes unclear is that just because we are also including the research as to what other policies have been made and learning what those things are to be presented, doesn't mean that that's what our intentions are, because we're still figuring out what our intentions are. Does that seem fair?
Very much, very much so.
Would be
Very much
helpful.
so. And I think it's been said a number of times that the approach, and I will speak for myself, the approach is whatever we do, whether we have a registry, whether we have self-certification go with that registry, it is a minimal approach. I have not heard in this discussion or from anyone in town that we should be looking at restricting anything or creating rules for certain categories of owners and other categories of owners. That just is, as far as I'm concerned, is not on the radar of the task force. So I think there are concerns about the expansiveness of this or the intrusiveness of this are coming from lack of information. That's fair, because we haven't gotten to talking about what we're going to focus on. And we can begin to do that. I also think that I would like to be able to assume that there can be a free, open discussion in this meeting that is ideas, some good ideas, some not so good ideas, some crazy ideas, some sound ideas that are brought forth by people because it's on their mind and we can discuss it. But until this task force comes to a conclusion about what we're doing, it is discussion. It is discussion. And it doesn't mean anything until the task force itself comes to a conclusion about what we're going to do with the information or the idea or the proposal. So the scrutiny of the fact that we are attempting to be totally transparent about this means that people are seeing a messy process, because they're always messy. And human beings, and especially myself, are human beings, and we do not do things perfectly. I speak for myself. Let other people speak for themselves. So I'm requesting a little bit of patience and a little bit of openness to the fact that we're moving through this as best we can, and hopefully we will begin to talk about the substance of what we're doing in a way that will continue to move us forward, and look to what we're doing next as opposed to what I would like, not so much what we did wrong before. Move forward, admitting and.
Just one more comment.
to-
It's to bounce off of what you just said. Moving forward in the open discussion, can there be respect for both parties in this? I can barely get a thought across, and board members' heads are shaking and are going up to the point where when I told Bob, and I forget which meeting it was, you just said this, but then you just did not say this. The head shake and the hands go up. And to point, Jane, you did not even want to call cleaning property management a career.
I'm sorry.
It's on film. It's when in the earlier meetings you didn't know what to call something, and Sherry said it's a career, property management. There seems a very big disrespect towards the people here defending their businesses. We're not here on the board, so moving forward, if there were just a bit more respect, Howard and Bob, you say you want the information, and when the people in the position with the information come towards you, it's almost combative. And I ask that it not be that. We're not combative. We are passionate right now, because this is my job, this is my livelihood, this is the bread in my mouth. And when it's kind of ping-ponged, like I have nothing to do tonight, I'm going to go to this meeting and ping-pong this, it's completely disrespectful to me. I'm the one that cleans the toilets of the people who come. I'm the one that picks up the stuff. I'm the one that fixes the septic issues and the water issues, because that's my position. I know how to do it, and I'm good at it. I get people to 5-star super host, not because the accolade to me. I know my workflow. I know what to do. I know where there's a problem, to not let there be a problem. I put all my roadblocks in place, and I do it with respect to all parties involved. I love my owners, and I've told the owners what's going on. None of them, they all said I never would have done a property rental now that I know that this is happening. It's not a good outlook, and I just ask, moving forward, to the Bob, Jane, and Howard, a little bit more respect to the people who are up here, who are exhausted because they did the full workday already, and they have other life things going on. They're exhausted and have not eaten all day, and they're still here trying to defend their job that they have to go back to the next day. So I ask, please, with a little bit more respect. And when we come up with these questions, we'll find it in their survey. We'll find it here. You opened the door for a legal issue. When you sent out that survey to the public, you set that fire ablaze. So now I have to do this. I'm forced to do this because this is my job. People who have hired me said now they don't want to do it anymore because of this board. And it just feels like a joke. You're taking my career as a joke. And it's so disrespectful to come up here. We are the ones, again, work a full day, have kids to go home to. We're missing football games to be here with our kids. Because we have to defend our job. Because it's like someone decided one day, let's have a problem with short-term rentals. It's not short-term, long-term. It is rental. It's just a rental. I just ask, please, as I respect, and I have to sit there mute and listen to my profession be gambled and my income. I only make $5,000 to get me through the summer. That's all I have. So I ask, please, if you're sitting in that seat, to do it with respect to the lowly people here who are doing this job and are putting the money back into the economy for tourists. Thank you.
And I have just one question. So when people come up and they ask questions, they deserve answers. They've taken the time to sit and listen to our meetings, just like we deserve answers to our questions. Like, how is that addressed? A lot of them have good questions, and they have good input, just as you all do. It is disrespectful, I feel, too.
I
Can I
think,
say something? One meeting I came to, I'm Dale, I'm Sherry's husband. I stood right here and I asked where the money is coming from this. And you looked me in the eyes and you said to me, you should have been at the first meeting. That's when we answered that question. I got shot down. You can watch the meeting and see it.
if,
You are so biased to all this, it's unbelievable. I'm not looking for an answer. Thank you.
I will make an apology if I said
I'm not
that.
looking for an apology. I'm
I-
just making a point. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Anything else from the task force? Let's adjourn. Oh, go
I
ahead,
would just like
Jennifer.
to thank everyone on the task force for their service, because I do understand the town people are coming and taking the time out of their lives and doing it, but so am I. My kids are at home. I'm missing my kids' stuff. I'm not putting them to bed. I'm not giving them dinner. I'm taking time away from my work because I want to serve my town. And I want to do it respectfully, but I also ask that the public be respectful to me
When we
and
give
my
respect,
service.
we'll give respect.
I've not given
Not
anybody
you. I'm not
disrespect.
talking about you.
But
I don't
it's,
know you.
Are not being answered.
Right.
I hear you.
You volunteered for this. We bring questions multiple, Tara Mason, Harpswell. We bring questions every week, and they're, like Emily said, we will look at this later. This is what this is serving, this is what this is serving. That we are shot down every time. And to question, I'm a single mom. My 2 kids are home right now. My 2 kids are special needs kids. I need to be there, but I'm here right now because this is the bread and butter to feed them, to take care of them, to transport them to their special needs school and all their things. This is ridiculous. We are not Rockland, we are not Agunk, we're not all these places. We are Harpswell. And if you look at the vast generation of people, or population of people here, we are generational people. Generational people who have, I am living in a house that my grandmother bought, that my grandfather bought. My mother lived in that house. It's a generational thing. We are people who respect this town, and we are not getting the respect back that I think we deserve. I respect every single one of you for spending the time and making the time. I know it's not easy to sit there and have a meeting and then go home and do the homework. I get that. It's not easy. But there's no respect back. Many of us asked questions, and we said we're not expecting answers. I think it's because we haven't been getting them. So we can't expect something. You want the respect, please give it back. I think that that's fair. I think it's fair.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Having heard what people on the committee, the task force have said, having heard what the people from the public, what you have said this evening, the answer to your question, Sherry, is let's, as a task force, figure out how we answer the questions.
Absolutely. It's
And
disrespectful to not
It-
address their
but
questions.
let me also say, when there isn't an answer, there isn't an answer. We have to be able to share that and have that be respected.
Sure, and usually answers can be found eventually, I mean.
Eventually,
you've said it too,
eventually,
so.
eventually. So I would ask everyone on the task force to give some thought to that for our next meeting. Any suggestions you have, bring them. And particularly on the questions that have been opened up, which ones you think we need to take right now, and which ones we would address as time goes on and we have more information.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're adjourned.